Good morning, Internet land. We are just going to wait for Instagram to catch up to speed, and then we will go live. So just let's give it one moment. Oh, knock it all into my desk here. All right. There we go. Okay, we are live everywhere. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of DIY Wellness. I'm your host, Brian Hogan, life coach, filmmaker, and clinical therapist. On this show, I'm excited to teach you guys practical strategies for improving quality of life and well-being. Just take what resonates and toss the rest. Today's episode is called Transcending Blame, the true meaning of the word responsibility. And this is a really topic that's really near and dear to my heart, because one of the things that I keep seeing in my online circles, even in communities I'm part of in the town, is this we're stuck in anger, we're stuck in outrage, and we're stuck in fear. And that isn't to say that it isn't justifiable to have anger, outrage, and fear. It certainly is. But if we get stuck there, then we're no good to anybody around us as we try to help make things better and pull people out of anger, outrage, and despair. So I want to ask you this. What if responsibility actually has nothing to do with blame, nothing to do with fault, and everything to do with freedom? So when something goes, this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the difference between blame and responsibility. We're going to talk about specifically what responsibility really means and why responsibility really means freedom. And then we're going to talk about how to harness the power of responsibility in a way that actually is liberating to us. So the difference between blame and responsibility: when something goes wrong, our first reflex, individually and collectively, is to ask, who's to blame? But the question itself is keeping us stuck. Blame means to find fault, to criticize, to assign guilt. Responsibility, on the other hand, means the capacity to make decisions and take action with little supervision. But hidden inside that word, responsibility, is an even deeper meaning. And we'll get into that in a second. Blame locks us in the past. Responsibility opens us to the present. Blame is punitive. Responsibility is restorative. The definition of blame from the dictionary is to consider responsible for a misdeed, failure, or undesirable outcome, to find fault, to place responsibility for. So blame is about taking this thing called responsibility and placing it out, away from you. I'm not to blame, so therefore I'm not responsible. But that's getting the definition of responsibility twisted up, which we're going to get to in a second. The definition of responsibility from the dictionary says involving important duties, the supervision of others, or the ability to make decisions with little supervision. So here's the truth, though. The true definition of the word responsibility, it's inside the word itself. So when trying to discern who's responsible for something, we have to ask better questions. Instead of who is to blame for this, we want to ask who has the ability to respond to this. The person who has the ability to respond is the person who has the response ability. That's what that word means. So we have to start taking responsibility for anything and everything around us that we have the ability to respond to. Now, that doesn't mean that it's on all of us to take responsibility for all of the ills of the world. You, from wherever you're sitting in your perch, watching this from, you may or may not have the ability to respond to the war in Ukraine or the genocide in Gaza. You have to really think about what you have the ability to respond to. Because if you allow yourself to burn out as the world burns, then you actually will have less of an ability to respond to anything, even the things around you that you could actually have responded to and made better. So blame causes us to focus on the problem. We want to find out who caused it. We want to be punitive. Even if we self-blame, it's punitive. It's not restorative. Blame roots us in judgment. Blame roots us in anger. Blame can paralyze us, or it inspires action that makes things worse. Responsibility, on the other hand, causes us to focus on solutions, unconcerned with the cause, unless it informs the present need for action. And that's restorative. Responsibility roots us in creativity, in curiosity, in hope. Responsibility activates, inspires right action born of compassion. There's a lot of wisdom traditions that bear this out too. In Stoicism, they say it beautifully. It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about the events. And blame is just judgment in disguise. That's all that is. Buddhism also says everything arises from causes and conditions. There's never one person or one thing to blame. That's very reductive. There's only interdependence. So the only useful question is, what response will reduce suffering now? What response within my ability to respond will reduce the suffering now? Even inside, like IFS and trauma-informed lenses still talk about this, because even inside of ourselves, when we self-blame, it's just one part punishing another part. Responsibility, on the other hand, is when our true self steps in and says, I can handle this. I can respond to this situation. I can respond to whatever's going on inside of me. I can and I will. So responsibility just means we ask different questions. Instead of who caused this, we ask who has the ability to respond right now. And whoever can respond, that's who's responsible. So here's an analogy that I'll use to bring this home for you so you can really understand how responsibility is like freedom. Imagine this. You open your front door one morning and you find a baby in a basket on your doorsteps. And there's a note on the baby in the bassinet that says, "Your baby now." Wow. Okay. So there it is. Are you to blame for what happened to that baby being abandoned and stuck on your stoop? Of course not. You just discovered it. Are you at fault for what happened? Of course not. Are you responsible now to do something about that baby? Absolutely. You bet your ass you are, because you're the only one right there with the ability to respond to it. So you're not to blame, but you are responsible. Wow. Okay. I'm not doing that. That's the universe agreeing with this point and loving what I'm saying, I guess. Okay. So that's what those fireworks are in the background. For those listening, there was weird emoji stuff that just happened out of nowhere. Anyway, because you're the one standing in front of that baby on the stoop that needs love and attention, you're responsible. Now, are you responsible to raise the baby? No, not necessarily. But are you responsible to bring it in your house, make sure it's warm and fed, and then figure out what to do next? Yes, absolutely. Because responsibility means who has the ability in that moment to respond. So that's what responsibility really is. It's freedom disguised as duty, because it's freedom from outrage, freedom from helplessness, freedom from wanting someone else to fix the problem. That's what real freedom is, because now we understand that we must allow ourselves to detach from things over which we have no control and look to build, create, improve, and support things which we actually have the ability to respond to. That often means within our local communities, where change becomes palpable, not theoretical, where action displaces outrage. The places where I see outrage ruling the day are like social media, where everyone's putting up into their own echo chambers what they think should be different and how the world should be different. But we need inspired action in our local communities. And that action is all we're responsible for. We're responsible for responding in the moment within our ability. And this is supported by wisdom traditions too. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, you have a right to action, but not to its fruit. That's what responsibility is, acting with integrity, unattached to the outcome. So in that moment, you just act. You act with integrity, not mired in blame, not mired in outrage. Viktor Frankl also said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. Viktor Frankl is a guy who was trapped in a concentration camp, managed to keep his enlightened attitude, came out of the concentration camp, and then changed the face of psychotherapy as we know it. So, if he can find a way to take responsibility within a concentration camp for his own experience, then I think we can figure out how to take responsibility for our experience when somebody cuts us off in traffic, say, for example, right? Okay. So in that space between stimulus and response is our power to choose. That's where we choose our response. This space is where we have responsibility. That's where our ability to respond comes in. We pause, we don't overreact, we don't blame, we don't pass the buck, we don't shirk. Instead, we pause, we transcend our reaction, we transcend blame, and we respond within the best of our ability. That's all we can do. And if you're responding within the best of your ability, then you are taking responsibility. Polyvagal theory even says this from a nervous system perspective. When we're stuck in blame or outrage, we lose access to our ventral vagal state. That's the physiology of calm and clarity. So only when we feel safe can we respond instead of react. So true responsibility requires regulation. Even Viktor Frankl, within the concentration camp, managed to find a way to regulate. So unless you're going through something where you're stuck in a concentration camp right now, and I know some are, but if that's not you, then you have the ability to regulate. You do. Okay. And you need to respond within the best of your ability to your own emotional system. If you need help, then point your compass toward the nearest therapist or life coach. That's fine. There's no shame in needing help. I have 2 therapists and they help me a lot. So it's just about what you have the ability to respond to. There's no shame here. Taoism even says, they have this concept called Wu Wei, which is effortless action. So the ability to respond without force or reactivity. This is the essence of self-mastery. You don't get to a place of self-mastery. You don't even start on that journey of self-mastery when you're stuck in blame, if you are stuck in blame. So freedom begins the moment that you stop asking the question, who's at fault? And instead you start asking, what can I do now with what I have in front of me, with where I am? So that's the true meaning of responsibility. Who has the meaning to who has the ability to respond? So when we do transcend blame, we actually reclaim the energy that's trapped in outrage. And that energy becomes creative force. It becomes creative. So, I mean, think of the global crises that we're in right now. There's war, injustice, pollution. None of us alone are to blame. But each of us can respond meaningfully in small ways, cleaning up our neighborhood, consuming consciously, being kind in the face of division. The thing here is to look at what you really have the ability to respond to and start to clean up your small corner of the world. It isn't on you to save the world. It isn't on you to clean up the whole world, but it is on you. You are responsible for whatever you have the ability to respond to in that moment. And that doesn't mean what you think you have the ability to respond to. If your bandwidth is low, then you might not have the ability to respond to something today that you may have the ability to respond to tomorrow. So again, this isn't about shame or obligating yourself to things that are beyond your control. It's about noticing, though, when you're spending all of your energy in some kind of echo chamber form of outrage, instead of actually spending your energy healing and connecting with self and others, so that you actually do maintain some bandwidth that gives you the ability to respond to your local community, to your family, to your children, to your local corner of the world. It isn't our job to save the world, but it is our job to save ourselves, and then it is our job to let that example help others learn to save themselves, okay? So even indigenous wisdom has taught this for centuries. The Lakota say, all my relations. That's their way of like saying hello. Everything we do affects the whole web of life. And in yoga, they say like the divine light in me bows and respects the divine light in you. That's what namaste actually means. So that's an understanding that we're connected. We're part of the same source. And so responsibility is about restoring balance, restoring our understanding of our deep, literal interconnectedness. It's not about assigning guilt. That's what blame did, and blame is useless for that. Blame doesn't move the needle forward in terms of progress. It might add clarity around how did this happen, but who cares how it happened? What we need to do is figure out how to get from here to the next place. And insofar as figuring out how it happened in order to avoid it gets us there, that's all we need to know. We don't need to blame. We don't need to get stuck in outrage. We just need to move on and respond to the best of our ability to what we can respond to in that moment. In the Hermetic traditions, they say, as above, so below. So what we mend within ourselves really does ripple outward. Every time we take responsibility for our inner state, for our overreactions, for our thoughts, we alter the collective field. Every time you heal, you add healing to the world. Every time you get stuck in outrage, you add outrage to the world. Every time you blame, you add blame and accusation to the world. Every time you take responsibility, you add more peace, more compassion, and more strength to the world. Even modern physics would agree with this. They say the observation changes the reality. So when we shift from blame to awareness, We literally participate in transforming the field around us. And also, here's the bottom line, folks. Outrage is what systems of power count on because outrage keeps us reactive. Responsibility makes us conscious, and consciousness is ungovernable. Consciousness is unstoppable. And so, if you're hearing this and you're stuck in outrage, and you hear me say, don't be stuck in outrage is making you more outraged, I get it because that's what outrage does. It's a cycle upward of lots and lots of outrage. But hear this. If you keep staying in that outrage, you are playing right into the hands of the system that has outraged you in the first place. So you've got to find a way past it. You've got to find a way through it because outrage does not lead to clarity. It does not lead to right thinking. It does not lead to useful action. But taking responsibility, clear-sighted, creative responsibility does. Okay, so that's the ball game today, folks. So maybe responsibility isn't something heavy, actually. It's a light thing. It's illuminating. It's the moment you realize I can respond, even if I didn't cause it, even if I can't control it, I can still contribute to healing it. So to transcend blame is really, literally, to come home to your power. So if this episode resonated, then share it with someone who's tired of outrage and ready for action. We can help each other focus on what's truly within our response ability. And because remember, guys, DIY wellness means do it yourself, but that doesn't mean you have to do it all by yourself. So look at in your life, where are you stuck in blame or outrage, and how can you transcend that by asking the question, what do I actually in this moment have the ability to respond to? And then when your empowered sense of self returns, use that power to respond to the things within your ability and nothing more. You are responsible for nothing more than what you are able to respond to in that moment. Okay. Until next week, much love, everybody. I will see you next Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Until then, keep taking personal growth into your own hands. I trust you, humanity. Much love. Bye.